Time for the debate has expired. Questions without notice. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann. Can the Minister confirm there are 928,000 Australians over 35 years old who will snap back to living on $40 a day after December and who will be ineligible for the Morrison government's hiring credit scheme?
The Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I thank Senator Wong for that question. No.
Senator Wong, a supplementary question.
Can the Minister explain that despite unveiling a budget with a debt well in excess of $1 trillion, the Morrison government has left nearly 1 million Australians over 35 years old without work behind?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. No, I cannot confirm this. What the Morrison government has delivered last night is our plan to get Australia out of the COVID recession and to get Australians back into work. We are not accepting that people will remain on income support forever and a day. We are actually working to get people back into work. And we understand that there is a difference between people that have a track record in the workforce, that have been employed before in terms of their employability, and the challenges faced by a more vulnerable segment of the population in the context of the COVID recession. Based on experiences in previous recessions, we understand that young Australians who've either not yet been in the workforce, who are about to get into the workforce, who have only just recently been engaged in the workforce, are in a comparatively more challenged position, and that it's very important that we ensure that they do not become entrenched in terms of having to rely on welfare support. That is why we've put in place the particular hiring credit in order to provide particular support to young Australians. But of course we want all Australians to get back into work.
Senator Wong, a final supplementary question. Order.
How many of the—
Senator McKim. Senator Wong, please.
How many of the 928,000 Australians aged over 35 years will still be out without work when JobKeeper ends in March and be left to live on $40 a day when JobSeeker snaps back in December?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. We are working to ensure that every single Australian has the best possible opportunity to get back into work.
Order.
That is what we're doing. We are working to ensure that we get Australia out of this COVID recession, that we get Australians back into work. And of course, when the Australian people, unlike the Labor Party, understand why we are in the position we're in, they also understand that Australia, while it's been tough and while we will continue to go through a tough period, that we are in a comparatively stronger and better position than most other comparable advanced economies around the world. And we will let the Labor Party continue with the sniping. We'll continue to work to get every Australian. We continue to work to give every Australian the best possible opportunity to get back into a job.
Senator Scarr.
Mr President, my question is to Australia's absolutely outstanding Minister for Finance, Senator Cormann. Can the minister inform the Senate how the Morrison government's 2020 to 21 budget sets out a comprehensive plan to get Australia out of the COVID recession and Australians back into jobs?
The Minister for Finance, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I thank Senator Scarr for that very important question. Mr President, the budget we delivered last night is indeed our plan to get Australia out of the COVID recession and to get Australians back into jobs. Jobs and more jobs. We are focused on saving the jobs that are needing to be saved. We are there to restore the jobs that were lost. We are there to create more new jobs, but it will be a private business, a private sector-led recovery. Because on this side of the chamber, we understand that jobs don't grow on trees. On this side of the chamber, we understand that jobs are created by viable, successful, profitable, growing businesses, which is why in our budget we have taken a whole series of very important measures to ensure that businesses have the best possible opportunity to be successful into the future and to grow, because we know that a growing business will hire more Australians. And that is, if you look at the measures that we've taken since the start of the COVID pandemic started, $507 billion worth of fiscal support, 25.6% of GDP in support of the Australian people and our economy, Mr. President. This budget alone provides $74 billion worth of support measures as part of our JobMaker plan to drive the strongest possible private sector-led economic recovery and to drive the unemployment rate down, which will be good for the economy, which will be good for the opportunity of working families around Australia to get ahead, and which will be good for our budget and for budget repair into the future. Because, of course, more people in work means more revenue for government from income tax. It means lower payments on welfare support for job seekers. Because of course, that is what we are focused on. That's what we've achieved in the past, and that's what we'll work for in the future.
Senator Scarr, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minister, can you outline some of the major job-creating measures in the 2020-21 budget?
Senator Cormann.
Very much, Mr. President. Our JobMaker plan aims to support about 1 million jobs over the next 4 years. Our JobMaker hiring credit will boost jobs growth by offering an incentive for businesses to hire younger job seekers. Treasury estimates that measure alone will support about 450,000 jobs for young Australians at a cost of about $4 billion. Mr. President, other job-creating measures which will help all Australians who are looking for work include our record investment in upskilling and reskilling Australians, starting with the establishment of the $1 billion Job Trainer Fund to create more than 340,000 free or low-cost training places. 340,000 free or low-cost training places. $1.2 billion to create 100,000 new apprenticeships and traineeships with a 50% wage subsidy for businesses who employ them. $1.4 billion.
Senator Cormann, time for the answer has expired. Senator Scarr, a final supplementary question.
Minister, how will tax cuts play a crucial role in the Morrison government's economic recovery plan?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Bringing forward income tax relief for hard-working families, focusing on low and middle-income earners across Australia, that puts more money into their pockets, boosts their take-home pay, but it also helps to stimulate the economy, because of course it will lead to a strengthening of aggregate demand in the economy. It will help ensure that businesses across Australia are able to benefit from a strengthening in demand. The budget also delivers, of course, significant other tax cuts. These tax cuts which we are proposing now, about $17.8 billion worth, build on $8.1 billion worth of tax relief, which is being delivered for the 2020-21 income year under our previously legislated personal income tax plan. In 2020-21, low and middle income earners will receive tax relief of up to $2,745 for singles and up to $5,490.
Senator Cormann, time for the answer has expired. Senator Marielle Smith.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Women, Senator Ruston. Why, in a budget racking up in excess of $1 trillion in debt, did the Morrison government allocate just 0.024% to spending promises in the Women's Economic Statement? Why is the Morrison government leaving Australian women behind?
The Minister representing the Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Senator Smith, for the question. The federal government is absolutely delighted to be able to have presented the second Women's Economic Security Statement as part of this budget, and a number of new measures that have been able to be added to the ongoing measures that are embedded in every part of the budget to support Australia's women. And part of our plan for the economic recovery that was announced, which was our budget last night, we believe that women play a very important role. First and foremost, we also understand that the most important thing that we can do for women is to make sure that they have access to work, when and if they want it. But there are a number of measures that were listed last night in the Women's Economic Security Statement, which include a couple that particularly in my area, the announcement of the paid parental leave changes to ensure that women who have missed out on being able to get paid parental leave because of the circumstances surrounding them becoming unemployed meant that they couldn't meet the work test. So we have allocated $130 million over this 12-month period alone to make sure that women who found themselves out of work due to the COVID pandemic are able to still access their paid parental leave, because we understand many of those women probably had made the decisions in relation to their families before the pandemic hit. We also have made sure that we have made a very strong focus of getting women into work in areas of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, because we understand the jobs of the future are going to be around that science base, because so many of the exciting opportunities for Australian employment going forward are going to be in these areas. So there are a number of areas in the budget that are focusing on making sure that women have the opportunity to be able to take the jobs of the future and supporting them in their education, their skills and their training to make sure that they can take those opportunities.
Ruston. Senator Smith, a supplementary question.
Can the minister confirm that for the more than 754,000 women accessing job seeker and youth allowance, the Morrison government's budget is simply offering a reduction in their support payments and a training course?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And the answer to your question, Senator Smith, is absolutely no. The federal government has made an absolutely unprecedented support package in place for all Australians, including Australian women. We have put in place, in March, we put in place the coronavirus supplement that was available for all Australians, but equally we understand that Australian women have equally been impacted by job losses. And we have, in the July Economic Fiscal Update, made the announcement in relation to the continuation of that supplement. But the most important thing that we can do as a government is to make sure that we work with businesses, because it will be businesses that create the jobs, to enable Australian women who found themselves without work during this pandemic to be able to give them the opportunity to be able to go back into work, because it will not be government that creates jobs. Governments don't create jobs. It will not be the government that spends us out of this recession. It will be business.
Order. Senator Ruston. Order. Senator Smith, a final supplementary question.
Why, despite slugging Australians with a debt in excess of $1 trillion for generations to come, is there nothing in the Morrison government's budget to make it easier to access childcare and increase women's workforce participation?
I remind senators to remain silent during order. I remind senators that while interjections are always disorderly, they are particularly unhelpful during the question being asked. Senator Ruston.
Well, thank you, Mr President. Well, I would absolutely refute the accusation and allegation in the question that I've just received. This government has gone out of its way to make sure that we've supported all Australians, and that includes women, and particularly women who have children, to make sure that they have the same opportunities as all Australians. But as I said in the answer to my previous question, it will not be without the support of a strong and profitable economy, strong and profitable businesses that provide the employment opportunities for women.
Senator Ruston, I've got Senator Wong on a point of order. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. The question did relate to nothing in the budget in relation to childcare. Just wonder if the minister representing the Minister for Women might want to return at some point to that question.
That was part of the question. I will be honest, that was one question that I missed being able to transcribe all of it because of the noise in the chamber. That was part of the question that I heard. I'll call Senator Ruston to continue.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, I would draw the attention to those on the other side of the amount of support that this government has provided to childcare during the last 6 months to support Australia, to support Australian women and families, to make sure that they have got access to the support that they needed. When they were out, when businesses were shut down, they had nowhere for their children to be able to get to work, and so they were provided with additional support. We have supported the childcare sector through this pandemic, and we will continue to support the childcare sector.
Senator, order. Senator Watt. Senator Rennick and Senator Watt. Senator Bragg. Senator Rennick and Senator Watt, save it for State of Origin. Senator Bragg.
Thank you, Mr President. my question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Can the Minister update the Senate on the Morrison government's plan to get Australians back into jobs, as outlined in last night's budget?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Bragg for the question. Mr President, as Senator Ruston has articulated, it is employers that create jobs. Governments put in place policy frameworks that employers lever off, and certainly the Morrison government is focused on putting in place those policies that will ensure Australian businesses are able to prosper, grow and create more jobs for Australians. And in fact, since the Coalition was elected to office in 2013, to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy has now created in excess of 1.5 million new jobs. And, Mr President, last night's budget further demonstrated the Morrison government's commitment to getting Australians back into the workforce. The Australian economy is now fighting back from COVID-19. And in fact, in the last 3 months, we've seen around 458,000 jobs created. And as our Senator Cormann has stated, the government is particularly focused on ensuring that young Australians who've been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 are able to get back into the workforce. Last night, the Treasurer announced our $4 billion hiring credit. This will give employers who take on an eligible job seeker aged between 16 and 35 an incentive of between $200 and $100 per week for 12 months. And we anticipate that this hiring credit will help around 450,000 young Australians that we want to get back into work. And, Mr President, that is of course on top of the announcement we recently made of $1.2 billion to create an additional 100,000 new apprenticeships. And again, this announcement, it's all about doing what we can do as a government to ensure that we have the best policy framework in place to get Australians, and in particular young Australians, back into work.
Senator Bragg, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. How does the government's JobMaker hiring credit enhance existing incentives to help Australians back into work?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, as I've said, we know that young Australians have been disproportionately affected by the impact of COVID-19. And the Morrison government's $4 billion hiring credit will support around 450,000 positions by giving employers an incentive for each new job they create over the next 12 months that employs someone who's been on income support in at least one of the 3 previous months at the time of hiring. Now, the hiring credit itself, though, complements other existing government wage subsidies that are already in place. We already have in place a number of wage subsidies for existing cohorts of people, such as parents returning to the workforce, Indigenous Australians and the long-term unemployed. We also have a $10,000 restart wage subsidy that actually helps job seekers aged over 50 to get back in the workforce. And in the last few years, that has actually assisted 50,000 Australians to get a job.
Senator Bragg, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. How has the Coalition's record of strong economic management built the foundation for our JobMaker plan for economic recovery?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And while the impacts of COVID-19 have been absolutely devastating on the Australian economy, it must be remembered that Australia entered this crisis from a position of economic strength. And that is why last night we were able to hand down the budget and make that further level of investment that we did. When we entered COVID-19, the economy was growing, and in fact we had record employment participation, labour force participation in Australia. The unemployment rate had fallen to 5.2%, and the budget was back in balance for the first time in 11 years. And as the Prime Minister says to Australians, we have done this before, we've got your back, we will put in place the right policies to ensure that we can emerge stronger on the other side of COVID-19. And that is why, as we emerge from the health crisis, the JobMaker plan that we have outlined to the Australian people will get Australians back into work.
Senator Griff.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck, and relates to the budget measures for home care packages. According to the latest quarterly report from the Department of Health, there are still 103,599 Australians waiting for home care packages and 7,400 waiting for a Level 4 package. While the government's media release talks about the number of places it has funded since 2013, it appears the budget allocation of only 23,000 extra places still leaves a shortfall of at least 70,000 places. Can the minister explain why the budget only promises 23,000 additional home care packages over 4 years across all package levels, despite current wait lists of 100,000 people who are waiting up to 18 months for a package for which they have been approved?
The Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank Senator for his question. Mr President, since the 2018-19 budget, this government has invested $4.6 billion in 73,105 new packages, and last night's budget allocation of 23,000 new packages, which is not over 4 years but over the next 12 months, will make a significant change to those who are waiting for a home care package, Mr President. And what we're doing is exactly what we said we would do when the Royal Commission handed down its interim report in November last year. We will continue to invest in new packages, as we've done on 3 occasions now, 10,000 in November in our response to the interim report, 6,105 in July, and then 23,000 last night, Mr President. And this financial year there will be an additional 30,000 home care packages injected into the system. Mr President, we have to grow the workforce. These 30,000 packages will create about 6,000 jobs. 6,000 jobs, Mr President. And to assist with that, Mr President, we've also allocated funding to the Workforce Industry Council of over $10 million. And as we announced last week in conjunction with Minister Cash, over $10 million to support training of nurses to go into an aged care support. And there are a number of other packages, Mr President, through other portfolios, for example the Job Trainer program, which will provide incentives to employ other people into the residential aged care sector. So, Mr President, the waiting list now has reduced by over 20% since I came to this portfolio. The 30,000 new packages that are being allocated will make a significant contribution to reducing that further.
Senator Colbeck. Senator Griff, a supplementary question.
Minister, percentages aren't people. When you look at real numbers, and 30,000 is a long way away from meeting 100,000. Now, out of the packages that have been announced, only 2,000 will reportedly be offered at Level 4, which, as you know, is the highest level of care. Now, around 30,000 older people have died while waiting for their approved package in the past 3 years. Why hasn't government allocated more packages to the areas of highest need?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator, for the question. Mr President, the government has allocated the packages to the areas where they will most quickly reduce waiting lists. And so where the demand is and where they will most quickly reduce waiting lists. That's the whole point, Mr President. So the allocation of the packages, the 30,000 packages over this financial year, have been allocated to reduce waiting lists, so that people don't have to wait as long as they have been for the care that they want through a home care package. But can I also make the point, Mr President? The inference that people are left without care is an incorrect one. All of these people have access to Australia's excellent health system to support them. All of them have access to Australia's excellent health system, and 98% of them have an interim package, have access to an interim package or a support through CHSP. They are not left without support or care, Mr President.
Senator Griff, a final supplementary question.
The budget paper allocates $21 million over 4 years to, and I'll quote, delay the implementation of payment in arrears for home care services. Yet the government introduced a bill that allocates home care funding in arrears in an attempt to address the millions in unspent funds that are being held or often not returned by providers when aged care clients pass away or enter residential care. Does this mean the government plans to delay the reforms by 4 years that will cost $21 million in unaccounted for funds?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. And the answer to the question is absolutely not. Mr President, we delayed the implementation of the payment in arrears cycle, because we didn't want to have a negative impact on home care providers during COVID-19. It was having a significant impact. Mr President, we will follow through with the legislation. I'll be presenting some further information, legislation, the second phase of that, into the parliament before Christmas, and we will be implementing the payment and arrears process during the early phases of 2021.
Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. How is last night's budget providing support for new parents whose work has been interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Abetz for his question and acknowledge your ongoing interest in the area, particularly supporting Australia's families, and your very thoughtful op-ed yesterday that I'm sure everybody in here read in the Examiner. But sadly, like so many Australians, women, expectant mothers, faced significant job losses as a result of the coronavirus pandemic through no fault of their own. And that's why the package that was announced yesterday of $130 million over the 12-month period to support those parents who were previously employed but found themselves unemployed and as a result did not meet the work test for paid parental leave in the time limit that was allocated. Under normal circumstances, the work test requires a parent to be in work for 10 out of the previous 13 months prior to the birth of a child in order for them to qualify for paid parental leave. But as of the announcement last night, those women who have gave birth between the 22nd of March this year and the 31st of March next year will be able to have a change in terms of the arrangements, and that is that instead of 10 months out of 13, it will be 10 months out of 20 months, recognising that the difficulty of the pandemic. So that will affect around 12,800 families and maintain their connection to the workforce. But we also really understand that many couples had probably made decisions in relation to starting a family before the devastating impact of COVID pandemic, and therefore had made their arrangements in relation to their finances and structured their lives, believing that they would be eligible for paid parental leave. So this temporary change recognises that for those 12,800 people, that we understand that they would otherwise have qualified for paid parental leave, and now they will be able to get access to it.
Senator Abetz, a supplementary question.
I thank the Minister for that answer and ask further, how do the measures for new parents build on the flexibility changes the government has already made to paid parental leave earlier this year to benefit dads and partners?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, earlier this year we passed legislation to provide new families with increased flexibility around how they use their paid parental leave entitlement. Previously, it was required that mothers take the full 18-week entitlement block in the year after their baby's birth. But under the changes that were passed earlier this year, we now have a situation where the first 12 weeks is taken in the first year, but in order to provide flexibility for the other partner, the remaining 6 weeks can be taken any time in the succeeding 2 years of the birth or the adoption of a child. And it also, as I said, it's very important that now we see that mothers can transfer their entitlement to the other parent or the other partner in order for them to be able to have access to this leave as well. And this certainly means that dads are able to share in the support of the newborn with these new arrangements. And we also understand that not all families are the same, and so we want to make sure that we've got greater
Senator
flexibility.
Ruston. Senator Abetz, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. How is the government supporting grieving families for whom Mrs Purnell has so ably advocated, who suffer from the loss of a child?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, I was really pleased to be able to, and I am very pleased to be able to inform the Senate that as part of the budget process, we've improved access to bereavement payments for parents who suffer the tragedy of a stillborn or where their child passes away in the before their first birthday. When I came into this place, and I acknowledge Senator Keneally for her work in this area, it became obvious to me that there were, in some instances, lesser payments paid to somebody, bereaved parents, depending on the circumstances of their families for their child's death. So what we have done is said the new stillborn payment will be up to $3,600 for parents on low incomes to support them with the personal and financial impacts of this tragedy. This will support about 900 families every year. We clearly understand that no amount of money can ever make up for the grief of losing a child, but we hope in some way this will support parents through that grieving period.
Senator Waters.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Finance Minister, Senator Cormann, regarding the budget. Tax relief for most Australians who earn less than $90,000 a year will disappear after 1 year. But millionaires and people like Clive Palmer and Gina Rinehart will get tax cuts of $2,500 a year permanently,
Order.
increasing further to $11,000 a year in 2024. Now, of course, tax cuts mean nothing if you don't have a job, and yet unemployment support is on the chopping block. Why has the government chosen the millionaires over the million unemployed Australians?
Minister for Finance, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I completely reject the premise of the question. Senator Waters is false. We have baked in tax relief for low and middle income earners into our tax system through legislation passed by this Parliament. And they say, oh, but just for 1 year. No, no, no. What they're referring to here is the fact that we have extended by another year the low and middle income tax offset. So we are in fact doubling the income tax relief available for low and middle income earners. So you have completely misread the announcement. I mean, what we've of course done here is bring forward income tax relief that was due to come into effect from 2022. Instead, it's going to come into effect from 1 July 2020. And what we've also made sure is that those who've already benefited from this income tax relief because they were first cap of the rank when it comes to providing income tax relief in our previous legislation, we have effectively doubled their income tax relief for this year.
Senator Waters, a supplementary question.
Yes, thanks, President. With a gas-led recovery that goes against recommendations from scientists and economists, and taxpayer handouts to the Vales Point coal-fired power station, which just happens to be a generous Liberal Party donor, why has this government chosen to prop up climate-destroying industries rather than support a jobs-rich transition to a renewable energy future?
Order on my right during the question. Senator Cormann.
Mr. President, colleagues won't be surprised to hear me say I completely reject the premise of the question, because our government, yes, we are committed to maximising the strength of the recovery, but we're also committed to do so in an environmentally efficient fashion, and we are committed to supporting renewables. In fact, our investment in renewables across Australia is higher than that in countries like Germany, France, in fact across the European Union as a whole. I see them shake their heads. If you look at what we are investing in renewable energy in Australia on a per capita basis, it's about triple. It's about triple to what is invested by Germany, for example. But of course, gas is going to be an important part of our economic recovery. I mean, if we want to ensure that our manufacturing sector can be internationally competitive, and we do, then gas is going to be an important transition fuel as part of on that journey. Of course it is. And any reasonable—
Senator Cormann. Senator Waters. Final supplementary question.
Thanks, President. Given that women have been hardest hit by the COVID crisis, compounding existing gender inequality, and domestic and family violence is at epidemic levels, why has the government chosen to invest only 0.035% of the budget in measures to address women's economic security and provided no new money for frontline domestic violence services? None.
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Under a succession of outstanding Minister for Women's Interests in the coalition, from Senator Cash all the way through now to Senator Pine, we have made very substantial investments in terms of measures to prevent and to address domestic violence, including in this budget. I mean, there's another $150 million worth of support specifically.
Order, Senator Waters, on a point of order.
Point of order, President. Misleading the Senate. There is no
Order,
new money
Senator
in this
Waters.
budget.
That's a matter for debate. Please, you know better than that, Senator Waters. There's an opportunity after question time to debate the merits of answers. Senator Waters, I ask you to please respect the ruling. That's not the appropriate way to raise a matter of substance in an answer. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And as a result of the contribution of successive outstanding coalition ministers for women's interests, from Senator Cash through to Senator Payne, we have made a substantial commitment to the prevention and to addressing domestic violence, including through additional investments in the wake of the COVID pandemic, given some of the concerning consequences that brought with it in this space. $150 million worth
Order,
of additional
Senator
support.
Cormann. Time for the answers expired. Senator Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Sport, Senator Colbeck. Minister, what is the total taxpayer funding committed to support Australia's participation in the 2022 Winter Olympics to be held in Beijing, the capital of the People's Republic of China? Given the gross human rights abuses committed by the Chinese government, including what amounts to genocide against the Uyghur people, the suppression of democratic freedoms in Hong Kong and the imprisonment of Australian citizens on trumped-up national security charges, how can the government morally support Australian participation in the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing? Would you agree that Australia should step away from what will be a massive Chinese communist propaganda spectacle? Will you, as the Sports Minister, confer with the Australian Olympic Committee and the Australian Winter Olympic Institute to bring about an Australian boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympic Games?
Minister for Sport, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, can I say that Australia remains deeply concerned by reports of enforced disappearances, mass detention, forced labour and pervasive surveillance of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang, and by restriction of freedom of religion and belief in China. Mr. President, these concerns are reflected, I think, across the Parliament and the Australian community, and I note Senator Abet's contribution to the Parliament during Senator's statements earlier today. Mr. President, Minister Payne has clearly conveyed the Australian government's concerns about the situation in Xinjiang to China, including during her last 3 meetings with State Councillor Wang Yi and during her address to the UN Human Rights Council on the 14th of September this year. Mr. President, Australia will continue to raise our concerns during sessions of the UN Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly, as we have done consistently during recent sessions. Mr. President, I have some figures on support for winter sports. I will note that all of the funding allocations made to winter sports are available publicly on the Sport Australia website. The last financial year figures that I have for high-performance allocations were for the Winter Olympic Institute of $5.25 million, and ski and snowboard received $1.61 million for able-body sport and $1.23 million for parasports. Mr. President, those numbers go beyond Winter Olympics.
Order, Senator Colbeck. Senator Patrick, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minister, is it not the case that the International Olympic Committee's 2017 adoption of human rights principles in its host city contracts does not apply to its agreement with China for the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing? Will you, as Sports Minister, contact your counterparts in other Western democracies to urge that their countries boycott the Beijing Games?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And in relation to that particular matter, I do note the comments of Foreign Secretary Raab in recent days, where he indicated that it was his instinct to separate sport from diplomacy. Mr. President, I share those instincts, but I do not step back from the comments that I made in response to Senator's primary question. Neither, I think, do anybody in the parliament. Mr President, we have a range of avenues to advocate strongly for human rights in China, including directly with China and in multilateral forums. We will continue to raise our concerns, as we've done consistently through the joint statement with 38 other countries to raise concerns about human rights in Hong Kong and in Xinjiang.
Senator Patrick, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Minister, would you agree that if Australia is to boycott the Beijing Games, that decision should be taken now, without delay, so that Australia's Winter Olympic athletes will know where they stand and that appropriate financial support can be provided to the AOC and Winter Olympics Institute? Will you commit to full support for our athletes who should not be asked to compete at an event that will promote a communist government engaged in genocide?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I say that it is not the government, but the Australian Olympic Committee, the independent Australian Olympic Committee, who are responsible for sending teams to Winter and Summer Olympic Games and are independent from government, Mr President. And I share Senator Mackenzie's view that I don't believe the Australian Olympic Committee require financial assistance from the government. In fact, they're quite proud of the fact that they don't receive any. Mr President, it is clearly outlined in the AOC's objectives that the AOC has exclusive authority for the representation and participation by Australia at the Olympic Games, Winter Olympic Games, Youth Olympic Games, Youth Olympic Winter Games and at regional games, including the selection and discipline of all members of the team to represent Australia at those games.
Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Finance. At what dollar value and in what year will gross debt peak?
Minister for Finance, Senator Cormann.
Mr President.
Order. Order.
Are you interested in the answer? Okay, thank you. So gross debt is projected to keep growing until it stabilises at about 55% as a share of GDP towards the end of the. I mean, honestly,
order. Order. Can we please hear the minister who is being directly relevant?
They are assuming.
Senator
I'm trying to get the answer, but they're
seconds.
clearly not interested in the answer. They're just more interested in playing politics than actually listening to the answer. So thank you very much, Mr. President. As I was saying, gross debt is projected to keep growing until it stabilises at about 55% as a share of GDP towards the end of the decade, which equates to about $1.7 trillion. Wow.
Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr President. In 2013, the minister described $280.3 billion in gross debt as a disaster. How then do you describe the $1.7 trillion of debt racked up on your watch?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, unlike the Labor Party, the Australian people understand why we're here. They understand about the impact of the COVID recession on our budget, because they understand that as a result of 1 million Australians losing their job in 1 month, that has had a severe impact on our government revenue and will have a severe impact on government revenue for some time to come. Government tax receipts over the forward estimates are projected to be $227 billion lower than anticipated at the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook. $227 billion without having made any decision, just as a result of parameter variations. Now, you seek to make the comparison with your period in government. Let me tell you, the GFC was nothing compared to what we're dealing with at the moment. The contraction in global growth was 0.1%. 0.1%. We are dealing with a contraction in global growth 45 times as high. 45 times as high as what you were dealing with. And
order. Senator Cormann. Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Can the minister confirm that even before the pandemic he had overseen a doubling of gross debt and now leaves the role as Finance Minister with Australia's highest ever debt level, peaking at a staggering $1.7 trillion.
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. What I can confirm for Senator Gallagher is what I've confirmed on a number of occasions before.
Senator Watt.
And that is that before the pandemic, the gross debt and the net debt position
Watt,
under our government was much better than it would have been under Labor, because we corrected the forward trajectory that we inherited from you.
Senators
we
Gallagher
inherited
and
an unsustainable
Keneally.
spending and debt growth trajectory from the
Senator
Labor Party,
Rennick.
and we brought that trajectory down. And I
Senator
will forever,
Wong.
Mr. President, I will forever be proud. I will forever be proud about the fact that I played my small role in helping to repair the budget during our first 6 years in government, to the point where we returned the budget to balance, and to the point where Australia was able to enter this pandemic from a position of comparative fiscal and economic strength. Now, I know the Labor Party is not interested in this, but Australia went into this pandemic in a stronger position than just about any other advanced economy around the world, and in a stronger position than we would have if we'd stayed with your policy settings.
Has expired. Order. Order. I will call the next question when there's silence. Senator Watt. Senator Hume, Watt, and Senator Wong. Senator Watt, please at least pause when I call your name. Not often from the same side of the chamber. Senator Stoker.
My question is to the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Birmingham, and it's about something that is very, very close to my heart. Can the minister outline how the Morrison government's economic recovery plan rebuild and create jobs in Australia's tourism industry?
Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. I thank Senator Stoker for her question, especially as a senator from the great state of Queensland, with its very strong interest in our tourism industry and the number of tourism businesses across Queensland. Mr. President, our unprecedented scale of economic support for Australian businesses during the COVID recession through programs such as JobKeeper and small business payments of up to $100,000 has sustained hundreds of thousands of jobs and tourism businesses across Australia. And as part of our plan to ensure and secure the future of our tourism industry, we have outlined an extensive range of supports to keep the industry going through these incredibly tough times. Importantly, last night's budget outlined a cash flow boost for companies with a turnover of up to $5 billion by allowing them to temporarily, up to June 2022, offset tax losses against previous profits and tax paid in or after 2018-19 through a temporary loss carryback. This is an exceptionally important decision for many Australian tourism and travel businesses. It will help them in terms of further cash flow support and is a crucial addition to other measures, targeted measures that our government has undertaken. On World Tourism Day, we announced a $51 million regional tourism recovery initiative to support some of Australia's most internationally reliant tourism regions, including in Senator Stoker's home state of Queensland. We've equally announced a $50 million business events grants program to get events, conferences, trade shows, exhibitions up and running again across the country. Our $100 million investment at a minimum in specific tourism infrastructure across our tourism regions will help regions to get through the tough times and to build back better. And our $231 million record funding for Tourism Australia will help to motivate the domestic tourism market and crucially position us well when we can safely welcome back international visitors.
Senator Stoker, a supplementary question.
Can the minister advise how employers across the tourism industry have responded to the government's plan that was outlined in last night's budget?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, the tourism industry has warmly welcomed a number of the measures across the budget. The Australian Tourism Export Council specifically welcomed the tax loss carryback initiative, which they said will help to stem some of the flow of loss to business and support them through to the other side. The Australian Hotels Association said that it will help hospitality businesses to expand and grow in the months ahead and described it as a considered budget that will deliver comprehensive support, while the Restaurant and Catering Association acknowledged the work the government is doing to stimulate demand that it will help thousands of hospitality businesses to bring back young employees, and they describe the budget, Mr President, as a real recipe for recovery. Equally, many individual businesses across the country have welcomed this, such as Matt Waller, the owner of Adventure Bay Charters in Port Lincoln, who on ABC Radio thanked the government for what we're doing and described the budget as an amazing opportunity for tourism businesses like
Senator
his.
Birmingham. Senator Stoker, a final supplementary question.
Can the minister advise how the government's plan for recovery and jobs in tourism interacts with the decisions of state governments, including in my home state of Queensland?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, our government has provided unprecedented scale of support through JobKeeper, through small business payments and through the various other measures announced in last night's budget to support tourism businesses across the country. It's crucial, though, that we see state governments step up as well. I look indeed, Mr President, at the $51 million regional support package we announced, $20 million of which is headed to support internationally dependent tourism regions in Senator Stoker's home state of Queensland. The Palaszczuk government announced a very similar initiative last Saturday, only it was worth just $5 million. Mr President, we need to see governments do more across the states and territories in terms of their support for tourism industries. Equally, I saw Western Australia's Tourism Minister say the other day that there wouldn't be any rooms for visitors in Western Australia. Well, certainly Tourism Accommodation Australia say that they have rooms ready to be occupied.
Order,
Mr President,
Senator
and
Birmingham.
states and territories
Time
need
for
to
the
help
answer
to fill
has
them.
expired. Senator McAllister.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Women, Senator Ruston. Frontline domestic violence workers have been clear that the additional money provided for domestic violence services in March does not go far enough. Can the Minister confirm that all the Morrison government's budget has offered to women fleeing domestic violence is a re-announcement of what they already offered in March?
The Minister representing the Minister for Women, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thank you, Senator McAllister, for your question. Well, the answer is no. This government has made an extraordinary commitment to making sure that we support women who make the extraordinary, brave decision to escape domestic violence. And as you would be well aware, Senator McAllister, or well, you should be well aware, this government has a number of programs that are ongoing to support women who find themselves in the unfortunate position of requiring frontline domestic violence and family domestic violence services. They include the $340 million that has been put towards the 4th Action Plan, and currently we're in the process of consulting in relation to a further action plan to make sure that we're not only dealing with the response that we find that we have to undertake in response to women who find themselves in a situation where they're facing domestic violence, but also to make sure that we are putting in place the things to make sure that we are preventing it into the future. As you rightly point out—
Order. Senator McAllister on a point of order.
It is a question of relevance, Mr President. I asked whether the minister would confirm whether all that was offered in the budget was a re-announcement. She has stepped through the re-announcements and done it again in this chamber, but I am really looking for a confirmation of whether there is anything new in the budget paper at all.
Senator McAllister, you've restated that part of the question, but also the minister— I can't ask the minister to answer it in certain terms as long as the minister is directly relevant. And you mentioned yourself that the minister had been stepping through various announcements. My point being that's a matter for debate. The minister is being directly relevant. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And if you read your budget papers, you'll see that there was actually a new announcement that hadn't been announced before in relation to the ongoing funding for Australia's National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1800-RESPECT. 1800-RESPECT, because we believe that this is one of the most important resources to women who are escaping domestic violence so that they can make sure that they have on-demand— and I take the interjection from Senator Watt. I think it was Senator Watt that interjected. It is not a re-announcement. It is a new announcement in relation to ongoing funding for the 1800-RESPECT hotline. But as I said, this is in addition to, the $150 million that was made available just to address the issue of domestic violence during the COVID pandemic, as well as the $340 million of ongoing funding in relation to the Fourth Action Plan.
Senator McAllister, a supplementary question.
As early as March this year, domestic violence services and refuges across the country warned the government of an expected increase. Why has the government failed an expected increase in domestic violence during the pandemic? Why then has the government failed to deliver support to these women in last?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, as Senator McAllister should know, that the responsibility for the delivery of frontline services rests with the states and territories. We, as a federal government, provide the funding to the states and territories, and in addition to the ongoing funding, we provided $130 million in additional funding to the states and territories to support them in their support of women who are escaping domestic violence. In addition to that, we ran the Help is Here campaign, which very successfully provided advice to women who found themselves in need of support to find out where the services were available to them, and providing counselling and other support to women who found themselves victims of domestic violence during the COVID pandemic. And only last week, Senator McAllister, we made the announcements in relation to the allocation of the funding for 40 new facilities to provide safe places for women who are escaping domestic violence.
I could barely hear Senator Ruston at the end of that question. Senator McAllister, you have a final supplementary.
Mr President, women over 55 are the fastest-growing group of homeless Australians, and yet last night's budget delivered nothing to address women's homelessness. What advice does the minister have for women over 55 who are facing homelessness and have been left behind by this budget?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, this government takes very seriously homelessness, and equally homelessness of older women is of particular concern. However, and the federal government provides, on a normal year, $6 billion, Senator Watt, $6 billion to support the states and territories and the delivery of homelessness and community housing projects to make sure that we are lifting our weight when it comes to supporting people who find themselves in need of housing. But this year, Senator Watts, just for your information, because this is a demand-driven scheme, we will be providing $7.5 billion in support of social housing and homelessness initiatives to support the states and territories for the delivery of these frontline services to help all Australians, but particularly to make sure that we are helping older women who find themselves in this particularly difficult situation as a result of the pandemic.
Order, Senator Wong, is this point of order?
I seek leave. I'm seeking leave to table the budget paper number 2, which demonstrates that the 1800 respect number to which the minister referred was announced in February, and ask her if she would like to correct the record now or later.
Order. You've sought leave, Senator Wong. I'll call the Leader of the Government.
Thank you very much, Mr President. As Senator Wong knows, the budget was tabled yesterday, but if she would like, if she would like to table the budget again, I'm happy to give her leave.
Is leave granted? All right, order. Senator Wong, you've asked for leave. I've asked. There's a time for debate. You've sought leave to table something and make a point. I've allowed you to make the point. I've asked for leave, and the minister has granted leave. Senator Wong.
I'm seeking leave to move a motion to require the minister.
Well, that is a different matter.
Correct the record.
Okay. Well, that is a different
matter. If she wishes to do it after question time, we'll give her leave then.
Order. Senator Wong, that is a different matter than the one you just raised. So, is leave granted for that? Is leave to move a motion to, if I'm correct, Senator Wong, to call the minister to make a statement to the chamber? Is that a correct characterisation? Well, Senator Ruston.
In order to assist, Senator Wong, I don't believe that I did mislead the Senate. However, I will return to the Senate today and make any clarification or qualification should I have been incorrect.
Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck. With record funding for aged care outlined in last night's budget, can the minister outline the Morrison government's plan to provide more home care packages to support senior Australians since the 2018-19 budget, including since the interim report of the Royal Commission?
Order on my left. Order. Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Henderson, for her question, Mr President. Mr President, supporting senior Australians to live in their own homes has always been one of this government's key priorities. At every opportunity, Mr President, we have provided additional home care packages to help senior Australians with their household tasks, to get the equipment that they may need and access personal and clinical care as they age in their own homes, Mr President. Last night, Mr President, the Morrison government has announced $1.6 billion for an additional 23,000 packages, building on the $235.7 million, investing 6,105 packages announced in July, Mr President. This means that over this financial year, this government has around 30,000 new home care packages will be available to senior Australians. 30,000 new packages, Mr President. This brings our overall investment to an additional $4.6 billion in 73,105 packages since the 2018-19 budget, Mr President. And I do recall, Mr President, at the last election, the opposition went to the election with $387 billion worth of new taxes and not a single home care package, Mr President. Not a single home care package. So their crocodile tears fall on very, very deaf ears over here. Mr President, by the end of this financial year, we will have tripled the number of home care packages that were in place when we came to government in 2013 under Labor. And, Mr President, we will not stop until senior Australians have access to the package and the care that they need.
Senator Henderson, a supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Senior Australians need a skilled and responsive aged care workforce. How is the government developing and supporting the aged care workforce now and into the future?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, more home care places mean more jobs, and our latest announcement of home care will generate almost 6,000 new jobs over the next 12 months. Last night we announced an investment of $10.3 million to support the Aged Care Workforce Industry Council to lead the implementation of the Workforce Industry Strategy. And last week, as part of our response to the Royal Commission's report, Mr President, the government announced $10.8 million to expand the Australian College of Nursing Scholarship Program, to establish an aged care transition to practice program and establish the skills development program for nurses and personal care workers in aged care. Mr President, the funding will provide opportunities for the aged care workforce to increase their skills and capabilities and support them to be well equipped to ensure the care and protection of people in care.
Senator Henderson, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. The Royal Commission recommended action to reduce the number of younger people with a disability going into aged care. What has the government done to date to address this important issue?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, thank you for the question, Senator Henderson. It is important that young people with complex needs get the right care and in the right setting, Mr President. The government is proactively working to address the Aged Care Royal Commission's finding that residential aged care is not the appropriate place for younger people except in exceptional circumstances. Mr President, we are already making progress in this space. As at the 30th of June 2020, the number of people under age 65 years in residential aged care has reduced from over 6,000 in 2017-18 to 4,860 as at the 30th of June this year. And, Mr President, the government is providing another $10.6 million to to continue to reduce the number of people aged and under 65 or at risk of residential care, in conjunction with the plan to reduce the number of people in aged care.
Senator Colbeck. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much. I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.